Well, it's later. We are trying to keep it short and crispy. The future of cannabis in Southern Europe. Just to have an overview on the landscape worldwide, we can see a lot has happened over the past 10 years in the legalization process of cannabis. We see a lot has been done on that side already, and much more is going to happen on this side. It's not completely up to date, that map, but we'll have a deep dive into some of the countries. If you look at the legal framework for medical cannabis, we can see that Europe, that we see quite many green countries already, and that's mainly in Northern and Central Europe. But there are still many countries which lag a bit behind the legalization process, and that's mainly the Balkan countries or many of the Eastern European countries as well, and some in the northern part. We also need to distinguish what means legal. We have two expressions of legalization. One is really completely legal, and the way before that, it's called decriminalized, and that's probably most often the approach to legalize cannabis. And then we distinguish as well between medical cannabis and recreational cannabis, so CBD and THC. Just a brief overview, what is cannabis good for? It's always good to recall that. The magic plant cannabis has more than 100 cannabinoids. I think it's 113 which have been discovered so far. And if you look at that, those are the two most known ones, THC and CBD, and you see the different effects of those. So it's really from anxiety all the way to the other side to Alzheimer, or as a painkiller as well, which replaces morphine, for example, with way better effects. So you don't get that addicted like morphine, for example. And then the combination of it, you see it there. These are only two, and there are much more to be discovered. Just to mention a few ones. CBG, CBN, which helps a lot to get a better sleep, and so on. Let's have an overview of the world map, and then we will deep dive into Europe, and then look at some of the Southern European countries a bit in more detail. Worldwide, we can still tell Canada, Northern America is still the leader in the cannabis cultivation world map, but we can tell that Europe is catching up very quickly, and China is not to underestimate either. It's very hard to enter that market, but it's certainly a market to have an eye on for the future as well. Here, just quickly, in edibles, the different levels which are allowed. We can see the European Union, North America, and then one country in the European Union and Switzerland, which is certainly taking a leading role in the whole process as well, besides Germany, within Europe. Where is the music playing? If you look at where we are now, market size, and where we will be in the next 5, 6, 7 years. You can see, for example, 2019 in Asia Pacific, we had a medical cannabis market volume of about 2 billion, and that's going to be 10x within the next few years. That's a huge development which we are going to have in front of us, and I'm personally convinced. My background is more banking, finance, private equity, and it was a rational decision for me to step into that market. And one reason is that the growth. The cannabis industry is going to be one of the fastest growing industry within Europe over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, without doubt. Let's look at Europe. Similar picture. It's going to grow by the factor 10 as well in the next few years. And we have a yearly average growth rate of about 30%. Now let's imagine, if you look at all the cannabis companies in the market at the moment, not many are profitable, but the ones who are profitable, or which are profitable, they're going to outperform that rate. Latin America as well, big increase in growth over the next few years, 24% in average growth rate. North America, they had a big jump already over the last 5 to 10 years. The growth is slowing down a bit. The curve is not that steep anymore, like in Europe, for example, or Asia Pacific, or also LATAM. If you have a look at it globally, it's a multi-billion market. It always depends which studies you're referring to. There are many, many different numbers out there. It's very hard to anticipate or project what the real figures can be. So this is medical cannabis only. And we are looking in the next 5 years on a market volume of over 50 million. You can also find studies which almost show double that size. And again, this is only medical cannabis. Let's just recap quickly. Global growth rate in the medical cannabis business, 23%. North America, we had 16, way below that. Latin America, 24. Europe, 30%. So the momentum, geographical momentum, is very, very clearly in Europe over the next years. But not to forget the other areas as well. Now, looking at Europe, let's have a look at some KPIs. North America, we know the population is about half of it, a bit more than half of it. Europe is a huge market. Then we have the GDP and so on, but let's maybe focus more on the right side. By 2028, we estimate a total market value of 123 billion, and that's now not only the medical market, that's the full cannabis market. We divide that now, those 123 million, you can divide that into medical cannabis and recreational cannabis. And the interesting thing is, and over the course of the next slides in this presentation, we will always see this. Recreational is always a bit higher than the medical cannabis field, but the regulation goes the other way. It's always first, they approve the medical way, and then once that has been gone through and passed and accepted by the society, we can look at legalization of the recreational market as well. What kind of cannabis? I said recreational, pharmaceutical, or medical cannabis, but it's not always medical is not medical. We need to distinguish and differentiate it between pharmaceutical cannabis that's really treated like a drug, a medicament. It needs to go through to different clinical trials, and only once it has passed all those different steps of the trials, it can be considered as a pharmaceutical cannabis. Medical cannabis also needs a prescription from a doctor, but it is not that restrictively treated like the pharmaceutical cannabis. Recreational, here we are mainly talking about THC. We know it, and CBD, which is legalized in many, many countries already, however, with different levels. Here again, the overview on the landscape. So black is legal, not the green one, and we are going to focus now a bit more on some of the countries. So I think Greece is a very important or a very interesting country. Greece has provided 17 licenses for cultivation facilities. Not all of them are being used at this stage, but it's certainly a market to look at closer as well. Then Germany, it's without doubt. Germany is the driver. Whatever Germany does will be the first mover and very, very essential for other countries to follow. Then we have Cyprus, a small and tiny country, but which legalized the medical cannabis use as well quite early. And then we have some very restrictive countries such as Sweden, Latvia, Belgium, Albania. They're neither the recreational nor the medical cannabis usage is allowed and sometimes punished with penalties, prison up to 20 years. Southern Europe, I think Croatia is an interesting market to look at as well. They have a very progressive legislation, and they just passed another round, and we can expect that much more is going to be legalized in that country very soon. Then France, Iceland, Denmark. I think Denmark is not one of the biggest markets, but very interesting in terms of deregulation. So much more is allowed in Denmark than in most of the other countries, and pharmacies prescribe already a high amount of THC to patients. France, we'll have another look at it on the next few slides, a very key market. Let's look at the consumers in Europe. France, by far, the most consumers. After that, we have Italy, and then Germany, Spain, the UK, and all those 4 countries. It doesn't make a difference if we look at CBD, if you look at THC, if you look at the advantages in the deregularization or so on. It's always those 4 countries which are leading. And if you put that into comparison to the population, France has a way higher acceptance in the society for cannabis than, for example, Germany, which on a legal perspective is way further. Just to have an idea about, it's hard to consolidate all in one presentation. I mean, we have so different things, so different topics in the cannabis field, but let's just look at some specific topics. For example, oil. Spendings in Europe for oil import. Again, the same countries, Germany, France, are leading it. And I'm Swiss, so for the size of Switzerland, it's quite impressive as well. Now, what opportunities are there in the market? What we can see here is always the medical market volume and the recreational one. And as mentioned at the beginning, we can really tell that the recreational market volume is always slightly higher than the medical one. How does the legalization usually work? It's basically always the same procedure. It starts with CBD. Once CBD is legalized, you have many producers which were growing under the table on the black market, so they are allowed now to grow legally. Then you have third parties who see the opportunities, enter that market with no knowledge, but want to profit from it. And then we have a third one. Well, those are industries, companies which are close to that field. For example, cultivation facilities for strawberries or cucumbers and so on. They enter that market as well. And then over the course, so what's happened then? Many new players entering the market. The prices are falling down. And then it's about a period of 3 years, and only the ones who have right structures in place, who have a good management in place, lean approaches and sales procedures, only they will survive over the course of the following 3 years. It's mostly the same procedure. And as mentioned, only about 1 out of 10 cannabis companies are profitable. Let's look at the young ones. They are the future, and they're gonna influence the legalization in the future a lot, and are also going to be consumers. What do we see again? France, the highest, almost 24%. So if you are on the table, if the tables would be full, like 1 or 2 on one table regularly consume cannabis. Not to underestimate if you go a bit to more exotic countries in the industry, or it's Bulgaria and Romania. 2 Balkan countries which are different than most of the Balkan countries. Most of the Balkan countries it's completely illegal, as well as on the medical, as well as on the recreational side. Here's some key players in the industry. Maybe you can download the presentation afterwards and have a deeper look on them. You may recognize for sure most of them. And here I would like to deep dive a bit into those different categories of Europe, and let's focus on Southern Europe. So what's strictly illegal? Strictly illegal is, for example, Albania, Montenegro, Slovakia, Bulgaria, and so on. So those countries. And then which ones are completely legal or very advanced in that field? It's in Southern Europe, it's Bulgaria. We consider France as well to Southern Europe, Germany. We're talking about CBD only here. Germany, Greece, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Poland, Romania, Slovenia, and Spain. Switzerland and the Ukraine. How is the sentiment in those different countries? What we can see here on this slide is researchers, do people, the population of a country, do they support a legalization of cannabis or not? That's the big one. And you can see it through all the main countries, the important ones. They support it by a very, very high extent. Then we can see who is completely against it. It's the green one. And the ones who are unsure, who do not have an opinion on it, it's the white one. So they may go either that way or that way. But even if you summarize those two, they will not get to 60%. So in general, the sentiment in Europe is very clearly pro-legalization. It takes time, as we know, to get through all the legislations, but we will get there. It's without doubt. That's a very, very important slide. Now, if you compare it with the US, it takes time. It's state by state and so on. And similar in Europe, it started way later. You can see it's about a difference of 15 years, of about 5 years. Huh? And now, that Malta just legalized it about a month ago. And here is Germany. This is going to be the booster. I'll make it short. So to the company JuicyFields, I'm not going to say much, but if you want to inform yourself, please follow one of those channels, have a look at it to get to know more about JuicyFields as well. And I'm happy and open to answer any open questions right now. Thank you very much. Yes.